A Fox News alert: John Dowd, the president's lead lawyer in special counsel inquiry, has resigned. Effective today. Fox confirming this. Isaac Wright is a partner at Forward Solutions Strategy Group and a Democratic strategist. David Avella is the chairman of GOPAC. Thank you both for talking to us. Paul Ryan is going to be holding a news conference any moment now, so if I have to jump in, we'll get to that. But first, let's just ask, let me start with Isaac, that we've just learned that the lawyer for the special counsel investigation, John Dowd, has resigned. The president had called for an end to the inquiry. That's number one. Number two, David had actually considered leaving several times in recent months after the president was ignoring his advice. Dowd did not want him to sit down with Robert Mueller. The president wanted to sit down with Mueller in the special counsel's office. The two were at a head on that one. Isaac, what do you think of this decision?
Look, Donald Trump has to be getting hot under the collar, right? The investigation's closing in. There have been 19 individuals and 3 companies charged with felonies so far. Some of Trump's own senior officials that have come to a grand jury and have pleaded guilty and are now cooperating witnesses. Now his own attorney, who is paid to defend him, doesn't want to defend him anymore. And it obviously, based on what's come out about his advice, his own attorney was afraid of what Donald Trump would get caught with if he had to answer questions under oath. This is bad for Donald Trump, and clearly the investigation is closing in, and he must be really worried right now. We should expect to see him lashing out on Twitter in the next 24 hours.
David?
Donald Trump has contended from day one that there was no collusion going on between him and Russia, which is what this investigation started out as. To date, there is no evidence that is still the case. If John Dowd doesn't think the strategy he has presented to the president is the path the president wants to go, he owes it to the president to step down and for the president to have a legal team around him who can go present the evidence that, in fact, there wasn't collusion, which, again, it cannot be said enough. To date, there is no evidence to says that President Trump colluded with the Russians to cost Hillary Clinton the election, which, thank goodness we got to talk about this, because I had a wager that today Isaac couldn't get through this segment without saying Russia at least 3 times.
I mean, that is the point.
Let's correct David
really
for just
Isaac,
a second on collusion.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I mean, first, I just got to step in. That is a bit unfair, because the whole point of this whole segment, first of all, is that his lawyer is leaving because he doesn't want the president to go down, sit down with Robert Mueller and express what he calls honesty and openness. He wants to essentially say there was no collusion. He's not afraid to sit down with Robert Mueller. If he did have anything to hide, one could argue perhaps he wouldn't want to sit down with special counsel. But his own legal team, it's not just Dowd. I mean, he had a legal team inside and outside of the White House who is on President Trump's side. It seems that Dowd was among the only ones that disagreed with the idea of sitting down. The president has actually recently hired Joe DiGenova and is expected to make more additions outside his legal team. But, I mean, Isaac, this is a very critical phase in the Mueller investigation. And whether or not the president sits down with the special counsel, he needs to have a legal team that's behind him.
Yeah, and attorneys don't want to represent him. It's obviously that there are problems here that are likely that he's going to turn out to be guilty of something. It's a question of what. We know that there was collusion, despite what David said about rolling the sanctions back with the Kremlin that were illegal, that Michael Flynn then lied to the FBI about, and that's what he had to plead guilty about and is now a cooperating witness. So we know there was at least that much collusion because that's already been reported. He's pled guilty for lying about it, and that's how he wound up a cooperating witness. That's why attorneys don't want to represent the president right now, because look at what he's doing with McCabe. I mean, he is literally trying to force witness intimidation against the same people who could corroborate Comey on a case for obstruction of justice. There were 3 different people at the FBI who could have corroborated that. They were either reassigned or fired.
For those who actually believe that McCabe's firing was politically motivated, here we have someone who lied and leaked information to the press, and he got fired over it. I mean, how is that politically motivated, David?
Julie, we can't let Isaac's comments go unanswered there. This investigation started about, did the Trump campaign collude with the Russians to cost Hillary Clinton the election? And there's not a single answer that Isaac or a Democrat that gets on television that has anything connected to that. Not one these days. Not one about this investigation. As far as
that's why there's an investigation. David.
Of McCabe, gosh, we now have an FBI director who's actually focused on law enforcement and not using the Justice Department or any other government job to use as a political weapon. And McCabe finally got to happen to him what should have happened to Lois Lerner, Valerie Jarrett, Eric Holder, Susan Rice, James Clapper, every one of those Obama stooges that use their government job as a political weapon.
Isaac?
Look, David is faking this anger to try to distract from the facts that are obvious, right? There are 3 people at the FBI who could corroborate Comey on the fact that there was a case for obstruction of justice from the president. Thanks to under Wray, those people have either been reassigned or fired in every instance. The president openly said on Twitter, no, David, I didn't interrupt you. David, I didn't interrupt you when you were lying, so you can let me tell the truth uninterrupted. When the president said months ago on Twitter that his goal was to get McCabe out over the issue.
Hold on a second. We're talking collusion and obstruction of justice. 2 completely different things. Collusion being legal, obstruction of justice not. If there was collusion, but it was not an obstruction of justice, meaning that the president did not try to take that information and somehow hold somebody accountable or somehow put pressure on someone to stop an investigation, that would be obstruction of justice. The president says there was no collusion with the Russians. Let him talk to Robert Mueller. Why not, David?
He should be able to talk to Robert Mueller. He has always contended he did nothing wrong. But let's keep in mind here, and Isaac brought up Comey and McCabe, even they don't agree on the facts of what has happened and how this all came about and whether Comey's investigation was ever done fairly. There is plenty of evidence that the Justice Department was used as a political weapon. And again, the new FBI director is trying to clear it out. And after 8 years of having an Obama administration that used the government as a political weapon, it is refreshing to see folks getting in and trying to actually have the government focus on the task it's assigned to do.
David
Maybe
Avella,
there's one thing
Isaac
David
Wright.
and I can agree on, which is Trump should have to answer questions under oath.
If he wants to talk to the special counsel, that does say a lot. He is not going to be going in there and lying, so you have to give him that. That's all the time we have. Isaac Wright, David Avella, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So what does this resignation of John Dowd, the president's lead outside counsel, mean?